So let me officially welcome all of you to tonight's webinar entitled The Value of Mistakes. My name is Karen Poplowski. I am the Chief Programs Officer for Responsive Classroom, overseeing the programming, both in the form of content and workshops and tools that we provide for educators to really support the important work that you do every day out in the field in the world of education. And I'm joined with some wonderful colleagues that I'm going to allow to introduce themselves because I know that they're going to give more justice than I can. But before I do that, a little bit about my background. I've been with the Center for Responsive Schools, working as both consultants, developers, really worldwide to really support educators bringing this approach into their classrooms. And prior to that, I was a founding principal of two separate schools and opened schools using that approach, and started my journey back in the classroom, really connecting with this approach. So tonight, I'm really excited to talk about this topic since it is an aspect of the approach that sometimes we may not go into as deeply. So it's great to be here in this space and time with my colleagues to talk about this with all of you that we're connecting with. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, who's going to introduce herself. And then Sarah, you can kick it over to Cindy and then Bridget.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I am Sarah Scavone. I am a classroom teacher. This is actually my 21st year teaching in Title I schools. Right now, I'm a third grade classroom teacher, but I've also spent some time as a reading specialist as well.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am coming to you from rainy Vermont. My name is Cindy Leonard. I spent the beginning of my teaching career teaching at the K-2 level in a local public school. And the last 17 years, I have been a full-time faculty member at the University of Vermont in their elementary education program, where I teach pre-service teachers. And I have been a consulting teacher for Responsive Classroom since 2004.
Hi, everyone. I am Bridget Kelly. I am coming to you from Gary, Indiana, where I am the assistant principal of our elementary school here at Steel City Academy. I'm also a first grade teacher this year because of the teacher shortage. But my background, I've been in education going on 13 years, started off as a PE and health teacher, and then journeyed into special education. And now I'm overseeing our special education department here at Steel City Academy, while also handling our elementary culture. I've been responsive classroom consulting teacher going on 4 years, and it's been amazing to just implement that in our schools out here and help our teachers really build their tools. And I'm really looking forward to tonight's webinar.
Thank you all, and thank you for everyone who's here joining us. So as we're getting and settling in, I've also seen many of you introduce yourself in the chat room, and we have people from many different places. We have the Virgin Islands, New York, Ohio, Australia, Tampa, Cleveland, New Jersey, Minnesota, New Hampshire, just to name a few. I don't want to leave anyone out. So you please make sure that you check out the chat box so you can see all the wonderful places and all the different colleagues. Because as I mentioned, we connect with people worldwide. So a little bit about tonight's topic, the value of mistakes. So we're going to dive right in. And in a moment, I'm going to make sure that the features on the panelists, because it's really about them and what they're doing and being able to share with you. With that being said, we want to hear your questions. We will reserve some time for questions. And so if you can drop those. There should be a Q&A tab that you have. So a question and answer tab. You can drop the questions in there. And then I'll try to make sure to reserve some time to address some of those. And then we can reserve the chat boxes for just sharing out information. If I notice resources that I can share with you, or if you have a comment and want to make a connection, definitely use the chat box for that as we go into this conversation. So tonight is about the value of mistakes. And mistakes are one of those interesting things that necessarily we know from our own self don't always feel great, but are such a great part of learning. And so we really need to think about the value of those, because challenge and struggle and bumps along the way are a natural part of how we grow and how we develop and how we change. And so with this, one of the things we're going to be stretching ourselves tonight to think about is looking at mistakes across a broad spectrum. Oftentimes when we think of mistakes, we think of academic mistakes, academic missteps, students getting the wrong answer if there's a cut and dry right answer, or students forgetting parts of a step, or making errors in grammar, or doing other different things. But we also know that mistakes in the form of social mistakes, so letting the emotions take the best of them and saying an unkind word, or behavioral mistakes, acting out in ways that doesn't represent the best selves. So we know social, emotional, and behavioral mistakes happen as well. And so kind of tonight, we want to think about, how do we come into those mistakes? And is the way that we embrace those mistakes, do we embrace them with the same care as we do when we're coaching students through academic mistakes? Are we able to look at those instances as bumps in the roads? So tonight, it's all about us thinking about that topic. And so while we are here to talk about the students, one thing that I found is, because mistakes are part of human development at all ages, not only can we find some grace for our students and some ways to embrace mistakes for our students, but a goal may be for us to also take away some things, because we all have those moments where things don't go and we hit bumps. So with that, we're going to kick it off by talking about a key piece of that, both for ourselves, for those around us at all ages, when looking at mistakes, and that is around empathy and the role of empathy when we embrace mistakes. So I'm going to kick it off to Sarah to start us off. You can just have us start the conversation with our colleagues around the role of empathy. And as you're doing that, I'm going to stop this share so our focus can be on both the presenters and our panelists and the conversations we're having.
All right. Well, empathy is a huge part of our job in working in schools. And one of the things that I have really been learning and working on is that when I can come at any sort of situation at just a level of understanding, I'm actually going to get better and more clear information. A lot of times, if we are really quick to react, whether it's an academic mistake or we think we've heard someone make a mistake socially, and we jump right into that, we're often kind of assuming. And usually when we're assuming that kids have done something for a reason, we're pretty much going to end up wrong. So what I've learned is, if I can really set up my classroom in a way that I can help students get started on their activities or whatever it is that we're going to be doing, if I can be in a position to just observe and make sure that they're getting started, then I'm better able to be the one to see when kids need help and need coaching getting on the right track before mistakes happen. But then I can also be able to ask those questions when I am noticing that they need a little bit of help to help them be able to get back on track, rather than assuming that something happened for a reason that I really didn't hear or I didn't see. So I've learned across the years to really slow myself down. And as I'm slowing myself down and I'm remaining calm and asking those questions, I'm really showing a lot of trust in my students to help them to be able to get back on track.
I just want to jump off what you said, Sarah. I think that idea of question asking and trust are so key. It's our relationships with our students that allow them to feel safe and supported, and our empathy shows we care. So I think that those are key pieces. And that piece of the empathy is the acknowledging that learning and trying new things can be tricky and challenging for everyone. So I think that piece as well, that empathy of, you're right, it's hard.
Mhm.
It's hard to try this. It's hard to make a mistake. I get that. I think that empathy piece builds on what you were talking about, Sarah.
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
kind of goes
definitely.
back to how we set up our classroom at the beginning of the year. Right away, when we're helping students to build those relationships with each other, and we're building our relationships with them, we're setting the stage that this is a place for learning, and learning can sometimes be messy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's interesting, working with the littles, you have this opportunity. So it's like approaching every single day with an opportunity as myself as the teacher and leader in the room to show and model this empathy, and that I'm very human and I make mistakes every day. So collectively, they see us as leaders every day modeling what this empathy looks like, and really taking ownership of the mistakes, but using it as an opportunity to continue to learn. And you can take that learning within yourself in real time, and you show that to your students, and they're like, wow, Miss Kelly, she made a mistake, but wow, look at her now. And I think just that real life modeling and expressing and talking to them through the process is really been it's been phenomenal for me, just seeing it in first grade, because they're very emotional. Like, they don't like to make mistakes when they're this young developmentally, and helping them through that process by way of empathy. I've really seen them grow in their emotional intelligence on like how to handle their mistakes.
I think, Bridget, you brought up something developmentally too, because we know for the developmental continuum, there's some ages where mistakes are a little bit trickier. When students are at the age where they're wanting to please, they're wanting approval, and they're needing that, and they make that mistake. Sometimes overcoming that can be a little bit tricky. And another thing that was brought up is around that I'm hearing themes of being genuine and also trust. And so, what are some ways that you help build that trust and help students know that you see them? And, either through language or from other strategies, or just planned events like morning meeting. What are some different ways you help build that empathy? So not only you are accepting of their mistakes, but others are accepting of those mistakes.
I rely a lot on language sims. And I have a place in my room where, when we have certain conversations, and we come up with a plan for these are some of the things we might want to say if we're playing our game today and our partner gets stuck, or we realize, my partner or myself, when we have different answers. So I think a huge part in helping students to be able to work successfully together is helping them to be prepared for some of those sticky situations. So I really rely on teaching what those language sims sound like, so kids have the tools. I don't want to always have to be jumping in. I want them to keep in mind, what would happen if my teacher wasn't right here? Well, these are the things I would want my students to say. These are the things I would want them to do. So I have those in a place in my classroom where they'll be able to use those.
Yeah, I think those are awesome, those reminders. And I think of other tools as well that teachers can model using your metacognitive skills. Like when you get to that point of mistake, using your think alouds or your explicit teaching, teacher modeling, just to so kids can kind of see your thought process, because sometimes we may be in the midst of correcting our mistakes, and they don't have any idea what we're using or what tools that we're implementing to correct our mistakes. And you have to go into that metacognitive process of teaching them what it sounds like in my head. Like, what am I thinking right now at the moment of the mistake? And then using those sentence starters or those reminders that are hung on the wall that they can refer to in the moment. So I think definitely teaching those metacognitive skills as early as possible, so kids can start to process internally like what they're thinking and feeling, and hopefully that can turn into action, and they can learn to communicate potentially, their concerns or their feelings as they get developmentally older.
I was thinking of another thing that I think was mentioned, was just that idea of trust. And I think that comes from some of the things you're saying, of to build that trust and empathy when you question, when you listen, when you see a mistake, and they don't hear judgment, they hear acknowledgement, and then they're like, the empathy piece of that was hard, wasn't it? And then that piece of moving on. I think that's key to the trust, that they don't have to go into fight or flight because they don't feel that judgment's coming. They understand it's acknowledged, but it's like, this happens. And there isn't that judgment. That's this, let's move on. How can I help you with that? I think that's very important.
And as you said that, the one, it was something interesting I noticed in it was brought to my attention through part of my responsive classroom training, is when we think about the language we use with mistakes when they're academic. So for example, we may walk by and see someone has written 3 + 5 = 10. And it's clearly, should be 8. If I'm doing math correctly, it's 7:20 on this Thursday evening. But if we think about the language we use, when we see a student do that, we may say, oh, let's stop. Let's look at this again. Let's think this through. We have 3, we're going to do 5 more. But when it becomes to behavioral mistakes, someone is upset and makes a miscue, says a wrong word. When it becomes to forgetting routines, when it becomes to someone not able to handle their emotions or handle a social situation, do we step in with that same language? And do we still build that same level of trust that it's a safe place for me to be learning and expected to be learning? And so I'm saying that to lead into what Bridget has alluded to, and all of you have alluded to, is how can our language is part of that, but how can we model embracing challenges? How can we be a role model for that, model that for students? And so Cindy, I'll start off with you.
So I think we've touched on that in all these other answers, but Bridget, I think you talked about that think aloud piece of, that's embracing challenges by acknowledging that you work through them as well. I think anytime that we can share personal experiences, it's so powerful with students. I think you both talked about that as well. And, thinking about what Karen has mentioned, that we need to share experiences of, when we tried, something new that maybe can be relatable to academic skills and how hard it was and how we felt about it and, what we did. But also even experiences like, when we said something and it hurt one of our friends' feelings and we didn't realize it, that even we as adults can make these social mistakes. And, I didn't realize that. And, she's such a good friend. And I realized, when she said that. So I think those sharing personal experiences that they can relate to both academically and socially, I think is so powerful because, wow, if this trusted, respected adult can make these mistakes and is willing to share and maybe talk about what they did and how it was a little tricky and I felt a little uncomfortable, I think that goes a long way to making them feel safe enough to do that as well. And then, so sharing past experiences or even acknowledging them in the moment, or even talking about sometimes when you have interactions with students in the class and you can do that one-on-one and say, I realized when I said that might, it didn't come across the way I wanted. So I think a lot of those pieces of just being open and honest with the students frees them up to be open and honest. I think that's really powerful. And I love all about, thinking about teacher language to me is just so intriguing. It's just one of my favorite components on thinking about how I teach and use the responsive classroom approach. But so things like when you're responding, even in a social situation, having your own sentence frames and stems that you use. So some of the things that I've used as, well, here's a learning opportunity, which frames it in the positive. So, wow, we've just come across a learning opportunity here. Or things I've tried with some of my students, if we can sit is, how can I help you move forward? So letting them feel some control of that. So just little things that we say, let's stop and figure this out together. So some of those pieces I think are great. Classrooms that I've been in with my student teachers, one teacher had a great piece of she had the word can't, with a big X symbol through it. And the only thing she allowed was not yet. It's it's not, I can't do it. I'm not able to yet. And wow, that is really powerful. That's a whole growth mindset, really embraces kind of looking at challenges in a way that's just not yet. So a few of the things that I've seen.
And so Sarah or Bridget, some other ideas or thoughts to build
Yeah, I
upon?
think the power of yet is pretty amazing. My first graders, they're into Sesame Street, so that's a big part of our day. And the new and revised Sesame Street, they have this song, and it's called "The Power of Yet." And I think like finding ways to bring that growth mindset. I know there was a question in the chat about that, about how do you give students or help them with growth mindsets, but I think it's finding different and unique ways to teach them what growth mindset means. And then every day, like trying to model where they've come from to where they are. So, hey, remember yesterday, Sarah, you couldn't get through, the 10 problems, 3 plus 10. But today, like, look at you, like you got it. You got it, girl. Like look how much you've grown. So trying to bring in real life examples of their growth will help them with their growth mindsets. It's sometimes hard to say a growth mindset means you believe you can keep doing it. I mean, that's kind of bland for students, but bringing it to their life, I think really, really brings that mindset, that growth mindset terminology. It takes it from terminology to like a real life thing for them. And I think that's pretty important. And you can find like Class Dojo videos. They've got their big idea videos that talk about Mojo Dojo and growth mindset. And the kids are like, Mojo Dojo, and they're working through what that means through like cartoons and things that they can relate to. So I think it's just pretty amazing. I see somebody put a yoga, that meditation. Those things are also amazing. So I definitely think that power of yet, things that kids can relate to. And you modeling your growth once again in real time. As a first grade teacher now, I can be very emotional because they're so young and it's hard. It's really hard. But like I'll come in, I'll say, you remember yesterday, Coach Kelly, like was really, I was kind of on edge with your behavior and I didn't use the right tone, throughout the day. But today, like, look at me now, like I'm smiling and like we've got through our math lesson. And they can see like, you know what, she didn't spiral today because they like to say I spiral. When I kind of go on a tangent, they'll say she's spiraling. So like they can see like she didn't spiral today and I can tell them why and what I had to do to get to that point of not kind of letting my emotions, get the best of me because they were being 7 for the day. And that can be a little overwhelming for anybody. So, but definitely a power of yet and finding fun ways to bring that to life in your classroom for all ages.
But one of the things you just mentioned was like that genuine ability to celebrate when we do make those changes. And I think sometimes we forget that we want our students to kind of acknowledge when they make those mistakes, but we want them to learn from it. And we want them to remember that because their sense of responsibility and their sense of achievement from being able to be a part of that problem solving is huge. And those are the lessons that they're going to really learn and take with them. So just remembering to stop and slow down and acknowledge and celebrate is huge for them.
Another thing that just having people share was making me think of the, kind of modeling, embracing challenges. I think when we're kind of talking about it with a group of students, kind of as we're having conversations and setting up that risk-taking atmosphere in our classroom, if we can help them realize that they address challenges all the time, it doesn't have to be school challenges. And if we can set it up in a way that they can make connections to think, something that you did, it doesn't have to be in school, but was there a time that you tried something new and tried something hard? Or was there a time when you were working with a friend and things didn't go quite right and you're trying to fix it? So if we can make those to get them to realize, wow, I do handle challenges. It just doesn't have to be in school, that they can see, oh, I've done this before, and then it makes it's that kind of school to world connection, that we're not teaching these skills as school skills. We're teaching them as life skills. So anytime we can bring that in and kind of let them see their power and that they have done this before, I think can be really key.
Yeah, the combination of what you all are talking about, brings that full circle of, it's not just what, but how. It's not just what we try to teach, but how we try to teach it, both through our explicit support of students, but through those rich examples of how we embrace our own mistakes. I always would laugh and say my first year teaching, I think I spent saying, I want one day where things just go where I had it planned. And every day I would think about all the things didn't go, and finally realizing that, this is life. And there's always going to be that moments. And a sign of a good teacher isn't perfection. It's how they roll with it. And so I think you being able to, share those very candid things of like, we have moments, and definitely all of us coming through pandemic world, we being just really honest about the fact that we've been stretched too. And how, we just being real with the students, that candor, both with us explicitly teaching them, but also having our actions match our words by the way we handle those moments when we may be at a place where it's not what we exactly want to be. So I appreciate that balance of role modeling and being a model. And so speaking about things we've been noticing this year in the pandemic and in general, I would just love to hear what are some big challenges and hurdles that you've noticed students needing to work through this year. And so with that, I'm going to start. We'll start with Sarah and Bridget, whoever wants to kind of kick us off there.
Okay.
I think Bridget, you're actually kicking us. Bridget, you're kicking us off.
Yeah, I think the struggles, my struggles this year was something totally different because I took on the first grade teaching role. I'm secondary by nature, so it was a struggle just in general. To be quite frank, they cried the first quarter, and then we figured it out. But I think the biggest struggle that they struggle with, and as well as I think what I struggle with, and a lot of our elementary teachers, is this whole idea, these maxims of development, specifically around growth is uneven. And kids go through social, emotional, physical, all these different stages at any given rate, at any given time. And sometimes they cycle through them in the moment 4 or 5 or 6 different times. And it's pretty overwhelming. And it's a constant struggle because as a teacher, you're trying to put routines and procedures and systems in place to support them at this very transitional part of their lives. And as the student, they're just so emotional because they don't understand what's going on. So I think it's the struggle of trying to support their development, which is super unstable, while producing stability within the room, which is where I think responsive classroom has been a change agent for me over the years, from middle school down to elementary, seeing that it really does work through the spectrum of grades. And when you have those routines and procedures and you have that opening morning meeting and closing circle, and you're really focused on teacher language to drive your culture and not extrinsic motivators like class dojo or ladders. It's really amazing how from day one, I was pulling my hair out like, oh my God. And now in quarter 4, I see the growth in the student. I see a 6 and 7-year-old following routines and procedures and managing themselves and managing other students, and they're tattling still, but I know that tattling means that they're expressing that they understand what they should be doing. So they're telling on everybody. But it's really been amazing to see their growth and how that the stability of the RC approaches and strategies in the classroom have led to their academic growth. So now we're able to move through curriculum a lot quicker. We're able to now start teaching some academic routines I think some high level, some high rigor routines. They're writing, they're reading comprehension, they're highlighting, they're using graphic organizers. And these are students that in the beginning of the school year couldn't, manage flipping through a book because it was just so new for them. So I definitely think the challenge of managing their development while keeping your sanity as the adult in the room, I think has been the biggest struggle for this developmental age, specifically coming off of COVID-19, when these are our kindergartners that didn't go to kindergarten. So they didn't learn what school was. I'm teaching them that now. So that's been the bigger struggle, is teaching them what school's about and those social norms, while being empathetic to their crying and their tantrums and all those things that you, as a teacher, want to pull your hair out with every single day. So that's my response.
And everything you were saying, Bridget, I was like, yes, that is the hardest part of this time of the year. And coming from someone who's always taught in Virginia, we call them our state testing years, our SOL years. This is starting to get to our crunch time where we're starting to feel like that pressure of we have a few more weeks until it's testing time. And we have had COVID and we've had kids that have not been in school for a long time. And now all these developmental changes are happening and we've been in school for a long time. So we're starting to kind of feel a little bit of those relationships from students start to go into, you kind of sound a little bit more like brother and sister right now. So how are we going to pull that community back together? Because we do still have, for us in Virginia, 9 more weeks of instruction. We also have a lot of pressure to go back and review that material that we've been working on, continue with our new material, and really continue to build and maintain those learning relationships that we've been working so hard in the classroom. And it's a lot. And when you sit back and you think about, oh, as the teacher, I am organizing and managing and facilitating and coaching a lot. And what we're asking our students to do right now is also a lot. So going back to, we want to be as proactive as possible and accept and expect that this is going to be a hard time of the year.
And you bring up something, both of you, and I'd love to hear more. And even Cindy, as you're working with pre-service teachers, that this is coming up because, you know, it almost seems like this time of the year can almost seem like it goes in a complete opposite of what we've been doing all year, where we're embracing mistakes and embracing growth. And there's this high pressure to perform right now. And so, you know, you're in this place where it's like, I want you to make mistakes, but not on the test. And how do you balance all that? Because there's real emotions with like, well, we've been really supportive along the way. Now there's this like big performance moment. And there's many emotions tied to it, both from the students' perspectives and the adults' perspectives. So I just love to hear how you're seeing that and some ways that you're trying to balance that.
I do a lot of self-talk and a lot of self-reminders that these are human beings and every opportunity I can give them to learn is going to be a positive learning experience. And I hope that that's going to transfer when it comes time. But I know what I want them to experience in school are those positive learning opportunities. And I'm going to stay true to those beliefs because those are the experiences that matter.
And do you think also, I mean, you're more with the students now, Bridget and Sarah, but that idea of trying to use your teacher language and your setup again to kind of frame these assess, whatever we want to call them, these standardized tests is, you know, in a way to say, you know, let your light shine, show them what you've got kind of thing, as opposed to framing it as make sure you don't do any mistakes. I think it does come back to our teacher language thing and framing it in a way that shows that, you know, we believe in them and you're in a way kind of encouraging them to let their light shine. You don't have any set expectations, just, you know, show them what you can do. You know, it's.
Yeah, I do. I think it goes back to our teacher language, always having those high expectations. Every opportunity is a chance for you to show what you know and to be your best self. And we're going to keep moving forward. And I think just staying true to everything we do is really important.
Yeah, definitely. What Sarah and Cindy said is that self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, what you think and feel about your students. Sometimes most of them, you know, they begin to think and feel those same things, and those thoughts become their actions. And I think it goes both ways. If it's a high stakes test and you're like, we gotta pass, the state says we have to pass, you've got this self-fulfilling prophecy and belief that maybe they can't do it, because it's like you're emphasizing the pass rate versus what Sarah said. Hey, we got this. Do what you've been doing all year. It's that self-fulfilling prophecy that you've been doing it all year. So like, this is nothing. Go out here and keep doing it. Like, today is another day, and it's just a day where we have to follow different expectations and we have to use a computer but we've been doing this all year, so there is nothing to it. So I definitely think, continuing making things as normal as possible, even through these high stake times. I think we rattle our students when we're like, oh my God, I step, I learned
Yeah.
next week,
So
Yeah.
they get nervous.
what you just said, Bridget, about that language we use all year, in math all year, we've been talking about what mathematicians do and how we are mathematicians. And in reading, we're readers and we're writers and we're problem solvers. And I think when we call students those things that we want them to own and believe all year, then we're able to kind of weave that in. Mathematicians answer problems this way. Mathematicians show their thinking this way. And it's just a little bit easier to pull that into what we're doing naturally.
Definitely.
I really appreciate all those such concrete, rich examples of the thinking and the ways that, this approach truly can carry you through, and then envisioning language. And I think it's just a great reminder for everyone right now. And sometimes it's good to just have someone pull you back in with that. And like you're saying, Sarah, you do that self-talk with yourself. And so hopefully some of our people listening in and participating in this webinar have that moment to, hey, we got this. And taking that approach, absolutely. What we pay attention to grows. So being able to pay attention to what we know we can and writing our own narratives. All those different themes came through in the way that you are supporting students through those challenging times at this time of the year. As you are looking ahead to kind of closing out the year, thinking about what are some struggles or challenges that you typically experience toward the end of the year, back when we had an end of the year, and or as you're looking at closing out this year, what are some different struggles or challenges you're anticipating as we're moving into the end of the year, and what are things on your mind for what you may be proactively thinking about supporting students in as they come to close this year?
I think for me, I think this is the time of students have increased anxiety. I don't know if it's because school is ending. I think it's because it's ending, and like this whole social construct that they know to be true is coming to an end. And I think that they, are starting to process what the end of the year means. I think for me, how I'm trying to overcome that with my first graders is to like make the end of the year about celebrations, try to continue to highlight what we've done, where we've come from. And it's a party the rest of the year. Let's have a good time. Let's go outside. Let's have a pizza party. Let's celebrate what you've done, because it's all about celebrations for the students. And I think you can continue to, have your academic curriculum embedded. But I just think for me, it's trying to help them with those anxieties of like what the summer is going to look like, because for a lot of our students, they don't, here where we are, they don't sometimes go on vacations, and their summers are at home. And I just think like really trying to celebrate and love on them, so that when they do break for summer, they can take that and carry it with them, as well as keeping them active on platforms. So like our platforms that we're using, like in our class, they can use them at home through the summer. And I'm going to set up Dojo so that we're still active on Dojo, so our community, can stay rich and can stay in contact with one another until we see, until we meet, we meet again. But I think, yeah, the anxiety and the fear of like, what am I going to do without this structure? Because this is 8 hours of their day. And I think with the little kids, they come to school, unlike our bigger kids sometimes. The little kids, they come to school, their attendance is pretty good. And it scares me when they leave, because it's the fear of the unknown, because, you're just so used to seeing your students every day, all day, and you lose track of them when you have the summer. So just trying to support their families and how to stay in contact, and leaving myself open, leaving my door open, so that the student and parent can know that the year has ended, but the relationship has not. And we can continue our relationship even during the summer months. And trying to get them to come to summer school just so they can stay in some type of, they can stay in a routine a little bit about what school is.
And I think acknowledging that different people are going to feel different ways is important, and building in time to have those conversations about, we know that change is hard, and we're going to be having some big changes soon, and leaving some time to be able to talk about it rather than.
Yeah, it might have frozen. Cindy, if you want to, there you're back, Sarah. We lost you for just a second. If you want to finish your thought about ending the school year and leaving, being away
Just-
from friends.
Just making sure to build in all the celebrations and all the fun that we're having, just the opportunities to have those hard conversations that, and the perspective of not everybody feels the same way. And summer looks different for everybody. And we want to really focus on that learning and the things that we've done together.
And I think it's that empathy too of acknowledging those hard feelings. And when they feel heard, and a change can be hard. Yeah, I can understand that. And, I'm kind of thinking about that with summer. I've been so used to being with you each day, just ways to connect with them. And you can't always fix, but just, I think even as adults, and so I believe it's the same for children, just being heard and acknowledged sometimes alleviates some of the stress and anxiety, because I've heard and someone acknowledge that, those feelings are real and big.
And it is a time where I am really honest with my students. I mean, I love summer. I love my summers. But it also is hard. Our routines completely change. And that's hard for me too. I like the routine of school. So I can kind of think like all of a sudden, like now I flip from being classroom teacher into presenter and working for Responsive Classroom in the summer, and all of my routines at home really change. And that comes with a lot of feelings for me as an adult. So I understand that you might have some of those feelings too.
Yeah, I think that's the funny part about looking as the adult in the room towards the summer. I joke with my principal and some of the leadership team all the time about, hey, if you can't find a second grade teacher, don't worry, I'll loop with my kids. It's just something about like when I'm not here, if I get pulled out to, do some admin task in a building, or, I have my co-teacher in here for the day, it's just something about when you really build that community, like it hurts to leave it. And I'm trying to, I've been in the classroom before, but middle school, high school is a little different because you're cycling through so many different classes. But I'm having like these anxieties myself around, I've got to pack up my classroom. I've got to take everything off my wall. And that's pretty emotional. So trying to balance my emotions of like saying, have a great summer, with like knowing that this is what classroom teachers have to go through when they build this community. And then RC is at its greatest, like your little heart hurts. So just trying to balance it. And I will loop with them if they give me the opportunity, because like the connection, I feel like if we loop, we can make it happen, but I think those fears of like, what does it feel like to not come back to this? As a leader now, as assistant principal, I'm like, do I want to go back in the classroom? There are a lot of questions. Confusions that I have right now. But I think it's given me a lot to look forward to, as Sarah mentioned, going on the road this summer and really, giving 100 and some RC, seminars, and really using this experience to really build and reground myself in RC and the community of educators that we definitely serve with RC. So a lot of things going through my head, but I think allowing myself the empathy to feel that, and it's okay because I care. And that's okay to be emotional and let my kids know, like, hey, like I feel a certain way about you all leaving me, and I think they need to understand that as well, as they're emotionally learning how to express themselves. But I will loop with them if they let me.
That is really clear. You'll take the crying and all, right? You'll loop.
My last 5 years, I looped in the classroom. It was the best. I even had one group, K1 too. So I highly recommend looping.
And so as I would invite, we have a couple questions in the Q&A. We are going to address those, but we're coming down to almost the 10-minute mark, close to 10-minute mark. So if you do have a question you would like to pop in there, definitely make sure you pop that in there. What I have seen a lot of that's just kind of been popping up, it's a theme per se that's been just kind of happening in the chat, and then also in the Q&A is really around some social, a couple themes, one around some social issues and how students who just are, as it's being phrased, not knowing how to talk to other students, being mean with other students, not knowing how to go into a group and play, some of those. What have been some of your experiences with those, and how have you supported and worked through some of those challenges in a way that in the vein of, with these short weeks, how could we help them make a connection and end strong so they go off to the summer feeling connected and closing it up in a positive way?
One of the things that I try to keep in mind is that kids are going to use the skills that they have. And that for me helps me remember that they're kids and I'm the adult. And if I'm seeing something, I'm seeing that pattern, then I'm going to try to come up with a way to work on one thing at a time so that we can go back to really building on that success. So if it's the way that that person is talking to friends, then we're going to work on just that. And then we're going to celebrate that growth first. And I think that has to come from one of those authentic private conversations, one of those planning problem solving conferences that we're going to have, with acknowledging like, this is what I'm noticing. Can I help you with this? And then really working on that from a coaching standpoint and celebrating when we see things getting better, and going back to thinking about empathy and asking those questions like, what's going on? How can I help you? How are you feeling? Just acknowledging maybe why it's happening and how we can help if they want some help.
I think that why point, Sarah, is really important. It's, someone had mentioned just how students are doing that. And for me, what I see it in adults too, but hurting children / adults often hurt others. And so sometimes if we see those behaviors, those hurtful behaviors, what I talk to my pre-service teachers about in their classroom management course is you need to stop and start peeling back the layers of this onion, because probably what you're seeing, because I believe in the goodness of children. Deep down, I think they all want to get it right and they all want to have positive connections, but there's something else going on that I don't quite have an idea about. And I'm seeing these hurtful behaviors as a symptom of that. So yes, I love the problem solving conferences and want to have those conversations, but I also note to self, there's something else that I have to look into, because I could very well be seeing a hurting child hurting others when we have that. So is there a way that I can kind of go at this from the importance of the problem solving conference? Because my job is to make everyone feel safe and welcome in a classroom. And I let the students know that when I'm talking to them to address that, but also think about, can I reach through this symptom to find out maybe what the root cause of that is? Kind of those two angles.
And another theme that's kind of coming up is around students with, it's that growth mindset and self-doubt. So helping students see themselves in a different way. The specific question in there is around a student who maybe looking at, I think Bridget answered some of that, a child is continuously calling themselves stupid, or to the point where they don't try and may just be shutting down. What are some ways you help them get past that hurdle?
Yeah, I think I answered briefly, just really trying to come from like a strength-based approach. Some of the things that our traumas that our students may be going through are a little bit deeper than the surface that we see, on the school level, but just trying to identify some strengths, I think, of the student, and identifying, and reinforcing with your teacher language, like, the things that they're doing really well at and how they contribute to the community. So, trying to bring them to the center of the community and how you are an integral puzzle piece for this and for us to be successful, and I think those problem solving conferences can still come into play, but I think really getting that student in the space to know that they do contribute, and they're some things about them that really, if we didn't have that in our community, we wouldn't be this community without you. And as you build that trust again, you start to, hopefully those walls come down and the student can start to articulate why they feel that way. But I think at first they may not, so it's like, hey, Cindy, without you in here, like, who's going to ensure that all these things are happening? Like, because when you're not here, like, morning meeting is not the same, because like you don't do our introduction greeting. Like, you bring life to our morning meeting. And I think once that student can start to see in bits and pieces that they are contributing something, I mean, it's not stupidity, that they can begin to open up as to what the real issues are. And if it's academic, I think chunking it, skills. They may not be able to make 10 right away, but what is the first step of like that skill? And once they master it, like stupid, like you just did that with no problem. Like that's not stupid. That's pretty smart. And I think that reverse psychology with them and then chunk them through it. And eventually they'll get to the end of it. It may take longer, but it's not about, it's not about the speed that they get there. It's the point that they get there. And I think just kind of thinking about how you can chunk out those pieces of skills that they're struggling with and then celebrate with them with all you can when they hit those milestones, because it's all about the steps forward, which I still think emphasizes that growth mindset, and it may get them out of that fixed mindset of like, I'm stupid. Someone's told them that they're stupid. And I think we've got to, we say in the RC, relearn things. We've got to rewire their brain. Like, you're not stupid, you'll get it. And we just have to get you to it. And once you get it, you'll understand like why you're not stupid, but you're super smart. And like you are a contributor to our community. So I think those are some things that I would definitely try and have tried with students to get them to like actualize like, hey, I am somebody, even if I'm 6, like I deserve to be here.
And I was a fan of on my classroom walls, like saying, so, one of the things I'm thinking that builds off yours, Bridget, is, learning is a journey, not a race. So it really acknowledges that developmental timeline. And another thing that I've talked a lot to my pre-service teachers about is you don't just celebrate getting to the end line. You want to celebrate progress and also celebrate perseverance. Just celebrate trying. The answer doesn't have to be right. It's the effort. So those kinds of things, when students shut down, if you don't try, you can't get it wrong, because there's that fear of that. So if you can, I'm not always looking for the right answer. I'm just looking for give it a go. And I can really celebrate giving it a go, and the focus and the energy that went into it, and some of those academic competencies. Maybe the answer wasn't there, but if I can point out the academic competencies, celebrate the perseverance, celebrate give it a go, post, maybe have, work in progress things, have students be able to, track their own progress, and really with that journey, not a race. I think that makes a big difference as well.
So Sarah, I don't know if you have a thought to add to that before we start to close up.
The only other thing I was going to add is that I think it can sometimes be exhausting and frustrating for students when school is really hard and when the academic work is really hard. And then some of the things we expect socially is also really hard. And I know for me as an adult, like I kind of try to avoid things that are hard, and I don't want to like I really avoid it. So I think putting in some of those opportunities for students to be able to work on those things that they really enjoy and those things that they do feel really good at is just a little kind of a breath of fresh air. Whether it's like, you're going to do this, then you get to choose if you want to do this or this. And it's still working, it's still learning, but it just, I think sometimes is that reset and that refresh that kids need, that gives them the boost to be able to handle that next struggle. Because I know just if all we're doing is expecting really hard things, we've got to be able to put in some things that can help them reset.
And Sarah, you brought a full circle back to the beginning of the conversation about empathy. And so I hope everyone listening has enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. It's been a pleasure to be able to facilitate this and talk with all of you. I think I could sit and ask way more questions, and we could talk way more just to hear your wisdom, expertise, and just inspiration. So I thank the panelists. And for everyone listening in, make sure a couple things that came up just to let you know about. There were some conversations about end of the year celebrations. And so all of next month's blog post and the webinars will really focus on that. So stay tuned for some of those resources and ideas. And A few themes came up around language, envisioning language, teacher language, a lot of teacher language, and also around problem-solving conferences. Make sure to visit our website in the resources section. Absolutely, you can use it like a Google search, and you can type in problem-solving conferences or teacher language to get just some ideas and free resources there. I try to drop some of the problem-solving articles into the chat. And then also, do know that if you've had a chance to take some of our core coursework but haven't taken some of our advanced course, we do go a lot deeper into some of those more out of the norm ways and ways to use out of classroom supports, problem solving, some of those things to really kind of help think about how we're helping the students so they all can go in with those skill sets. So those people who are like, well, I started this, now what? Know that those opportunities are available for you to kind of sit back, reflect, and remember the approach, because as many people have illustrated on the screen, it's always there for you. It's always there for you, and we'll always see you through the work that you do. So thank you all so much. I yield back the extra 2 minutes that you have of this webinar time. Go have a fantastic, fabulous Saturday or Thursday. I've already made it Saturday, so that's a bonus. Please don't tell people that I've made it Saturday. Have a fantastic Thursday evening. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.